This is the Work at Home Heroes podcast. Your host, Caitlin Pyle, digs deep with people from all over the world who make money from home. Get ready to wake up to a world of possibility for freedom, flexibility, and a life you'll love.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Work at Home Heroes podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Pyle, and I'm here with Paula Burgess all the way from Australia. It's 1 o'clock in the morning at the time that we're recording this, and she's been working from home for 4 years, so a little bit longer than most of the guests here on the show. But every now and then we like to throw in somebody who's what we call a veteran, just to remind you that there's life beyond the 2 years and kind of get you thinking about what is possible if you keep going in the long term. Because most people will overestimate what they can do in a year, and they'll underestimate what they can do in 4, 5, 6, 10 years. And so occasionally we like to bring on somebody like Paula who can give us some wisdom about the years beyond. So she started as a virtual assistant and is now working as an ADHD coach. Paula has 7 team members now, all that work virtually, and she still works from home providing virtual assistant and coaching services. She focuses on continually growing her business by sourcing new virtual assistant clients and coaching parents, adults, and children with ADHD. All of her work is done online, and she meets most of her clients using online conferencing, kind of like what we're doing now. So welcome to the show, Paula.
Thank you very much. And yes, it is late here, but that's okay. I'm a night owl, so it's all fine.
Yeah, we got to work with what works for us, and that's an ongoing theme for Work at Home Heroes. Is you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. You don't have to get up at 5 a.m. I never get up at 5 a.m. unless I have to be at the airport, and we're still rocking and rolling. So, and you're in North Brisbane, Australia.
That's
is that
correct? Yes.
I probably spelled that or said that completely wrong, but
no, you didn't.
I'm American.
No, it was all
Brisbane.
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, great. So ADHD and working, that's a very specific niche, and that's a theme as well in the Work at Home Heroes world, is to niche down. The money is in the niche. You got to have the guts to choose a topic area that's not general. If you try to service all the people in the world, like be a virtual assistant to everybody, proofread for everybody, transcribe for everybody, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot because you don't become an expert in that particular niche, and you're unable to be all you can be, so to speak, for your specific client. So tell me how you got into ADHD and working with people affected by it.
So basically I did start as a virtual assistant and still have that side of the business. And I did that when my son, who was 4, actually was expelled from daycare because they just couldn't handle him anymore. And we didn't have an ADHD diagnosis then, but we were sort of toing and froing from different specialists trying to find out what was going on for him. And basically when he was expelled, I knew then I needed to be around to support him through school, and it just wasn't going to work if I worked full-time for someone else, and I would just end up being an unreliable employee, really, when I had to keep leaving around his school times and him being asked to leave school all the time. So I just basically started my virtual assistant business from there, and when I started struggling through that on having my own business and trying to juggle my son's needs as well, I started looking for support myself as a parent of a child with ADHD. And in my area, I didn't find anything. So I just started some free support groups for other parents in my situation. And it sort of just grew from there, where people started asking me for information and support and where they can go for help. And I was like, well, there isn't anything. So I just started something, and then I went on to study coaching with an American institution, and 18 months later, I'm qualified ADHD coach.
Wow. So basically you turned your pain into a passion, something that you recognized there was something missing for yourself, and you knew you weren't alone because, hey, if you can't find support, then there's probably other people out there who can't find support and could really use it. So you turned that pain into a passion, into a profit, essentially. And so how much income are you generating now with your business, both your VA side and the coaching side?
Yeah, both together is roughly about $300,000 a year that I bring in, which is really nice. And obviously,
yeah, definitely.
Obviously, with a team of 7 of us, a lot of that goes in wages.
Of course, yeah.
Yes.
And what's really interesting is although you started alone, and I like to highlight this, especially when we bring veterans onto the podcast, is that even though you started alone, you grew. And as you grew, you were able to meet the needs of other people who want to work at home. And that's exactly what happened to me too. I was a lone wolf. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do it all myself. And then boom, I bring on somebody who is also in need of a work at home kind of environment, and she could make income while I was making income. And we both grew together. And so that's really amazing. And the more people that you have on your team, the more you can all grow. And I just think that's a beautiful thing. So stepping back for a second to who you were before you started working from home, what made you want to start working from home? Was there a moment where you're like, okay, you said your son kind of had gotten, not kind of, definitely got expelled out of his school. And so was that the moment where you're like, I've got to do something, or was it more of a gradual thing?
It was the deciding factor. So I was thinking about it pretty much from when he was born, because I was this parent this person that never really thought that having a child would affect my job at all, my career. I would just go back to work happily and my son would go to daycare. And that didn't work. My maternal instincts all kicked in, which surprised me. And from there, I was like, okay, well, I've got to do something that balances up being a mum and working at the same time. And I always struggled with that for a little while. So I guess when he was asked to leave his school, that was it. That was a deciding factor for me to go, right, now I must do something. And I put it all in place and started moving things along.
And how did that feel for you? Were you like, I am so confident, I am not scared at all, I'm going to do this and it's all going to be hunky-dory, or how did that work?
Oh, no. Definitely not. One of the scariest things I've ever done, I think. At the time, we had 2 houses we were paying off, and for me to then leave this job that I'd been in for 5 years, and I'd been in the industry for almost 10 years, to just leave that and just all of a sudden go and work for myself was very, very scary.
Yeah. And so what was your first step? I think offline you had told me that you had looked to a friend of yours who was kind of a business coach and asked him to help you. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. I had a friend, our children were in childcare together. I noticed that he was a business coach. I didn't actually know what he did until I saw his shirt, and I approached him and I said, I want to start a business. I need to around my son's needs. How do I start? And he handed me a book and said, go away and read that and come back to me and I'll help you. So he is now my fully paid business coach, and he's helped me get this far.
Wow. So you looked around for a resource and you found one. I think a lot of times people think that there are no resources. There's nothing that is there to help, but really it's just a lack of resourcefulness. And you had that and you cultivated that for yourself. What was the book that your friend recommended?
Oh my goodness. I can't remember the name of it, but it was written by Brad Sugars, who is an action coach. And I believe, he's got action coach franchises all around the world and lives over there in Las Vegas, actually. So I just can't remember what the name of it's called. I think it was called The Business Coach.
Got it.
Possibly, but yeah.
Yeah, something to get you to take action. That's really all that matters, because that's really what's missing from a lot of things, is that we've got all these wishes and hopes and stuff, but none of that is really strategy. Hope is not a strategy. It is the action that is the strategy. And you had the thing that kept you going was you knew that it had to work for your son. You knew he needed support, and that was really what fueled your fire. Would you say that's true?
That's definitely true. Definitely true. I didn't have an opportunity to fail. There was a couple of times there at the very beginning where I would just go, my goodness, the clients aren't coming in. And I remember talking to my husband, going, what are we going to do if I don't get the clients? And then I would go into this a whole thought process of, well, what was I going to do if I had to go back and work for someone? I couldn't have that flexibility around my son. So I had to sit back and go, well, I have a non-negotiable here. I have to make this work because I don't have any other choice.
Yeah, you actually shifted your thinking from all the ways that it wasn't going to work and the problems that you were seeing to how can I make this work? And I think that's an excellent shift and something that I want to highlight, because that's a mistake I see a lot of people make, is that before they get started, they start looking for all the reasons that it won't work. And so they never try. You were like, this has to work and I'm going to make it work. And you had that choice and you made it and you just took the steps needed. And not everything was perfect. Things were probably pretty crazy at first, and we'll get into that in a second. But you didn't look at those obstacles as reasons to go back home or reasons to go back to a regular job and reasons for your life to go on being in a way that you didn't want it to be, you looked at those as things that you just had to navigate around. Just get around the obstacles. Don't let them stop you, because I mean, really, it's just like if you're in the forest and you come to a tree, are you just going to go back and like, I can't get around this tree? Like, no, you're going to go around the tree when you're walking through the forest, and you're going to get to see, you know, the majesty of that entire forest. And I think that's kind of where the saying goes, you can't see the forest for the trees, because if you're staring at that tree, you don't see anything but the tree, but you take a step back and you see, wow, the tree doesn't take up as much space as it looked like, and you can go around the tree. And so what does your life look like now that you've made that transition? You've been working at home for 4 years. You are making it work. You're making a very sizable income, helping out 7 other people in the process, which I think is amazing. It's that ripple effect in action here. What does your life look like now?
Still fairly crazy because I'm constantly building my business. So I'm always working on it. And people quite often ask me, how do you work so much? You know, don't you get tired of it? But I actually don't, because I love what I'm doing. And there's a lot of truth in the saying, if you love what you're doing, you don't work a day in your life. So it is still crazy. I'm still trying to get that balance between my son and my business. Sometimes the business takes over too much and I have to pull myself back and go, hang on a minute, I'm not spending enough time with my son because I'm too engrossed in the business. But there was also times, like at the moment we're on school holidays. So I've only been working for a couple of days during the week so I can spend the time with my son while he's not at school. So that I've got a lot more flexibility now than I did when I first started, because I've got more team members on board to help me out as well.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a really important point with that word flexibility. And a lot of people go into wanting to work at home thinking that they just want to make money, or they just want to make money, and it's money, money, money. When the reality is, it's not the money, it's the freedom, it's the flexibility. And yes, it comes with, you know, more pressures, because if you don't work, then it's not going to work, right? And so you've got that extra motivation, and because it's your thing, it's a lot easier to make the choice to make it happen. And especially if you don't give your choice to go back home, you know that you're always going forward. No matter how small your steps are, you're going to go forward, because going backward is not an option. You can pivot, you can kind of change directions, but as long as you're not going backwards. And I just love that you've just made it happen despite things being crazy and despite making, you know, whatever changes, because you had a pretty calm work environment from what it sounded like in your old job, and you gave that up. And so I want to highlight that for a second, taking a few steps back, because a lot of people are like, oh, I have this comfortable full-time job. You know, what was it like making the decision to leave? Was it a no-brainer, or was it, I mean, I know you said that it was scary, but a lot of people just could not do that. So how did you make that happen?
Yeah, good question. I think it was really, I had a long time to sort of process it. I was sort of sat back and went, do I want to do this? I'm like, well, how can I make it work if I don't do it? And it just really came down to that I just felt like I had no other choice, that I needed to be around for my son. And I was sort of caught between this, you know, rock and a hard place, for want of a better saying, where I just didn't have a choice, and I felt like I was forcing myself into that decision. I'm sure I could have made it work if I stayed in that environment, because I had quite good employers at the time where they were going to allow me that flexibility around my son if I needed. I just felt that I would be more flexible if I was able to work for myself and I had my own drive to do something.
Yeah, and you were right. So I'm wondering now, making that decision, and I know that there's so many people are like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I can never leave a comfortable full-time job like that. Were there people in your life who said that to you when you were kind of in the midst of making that transition, or were they 100% supportive the whole way?
Oh, no. There was definitely people in my life that said that to me. Probably the people closest to me said it. So my husband and my dad were like, what are you doing? You've got a great job. You've been there for so long. You know, why are you doing this? So it really, if I felt I had to prove them wrong, so to speak, so I could prove that I could do it, and they didn't have to worry about me moving out of my nice little comfortable position.
Yeah. So what do they think now?
Yeah, they're fine now. I don't get any more comments about why did I do it or anything like that. So they've just seen, you know, after 4 years that I can do it and everything's okay.
Yeah. And one thing you mentioned in your application that kind of hit home for me, because I went through the exact same thing, and I know that there are work at home heroes that are feeling the same way, is that friends become distant as you change your mindset. Because I mean, what I've noticed is that people are going to do one of two things. they're either going to be inspired by the changes they see in you, or they're going to be discouraged by it, or, somehow insulted, or because it calls into question the way they've been living their lives, and it makes them really uncomfortable. And so their reaction is to just shut you off. And so I think that's what's happening to me, and what's happened to you as well. And that's something that it has to happen. I mean, sometimes this entrepreneurship thing is a lonely road, but you make new friends along the way, friends that support you. And I wanted to talk about this topic, and specifically, especially, with your husband and stuff, because a lot of people are like, how do I get my spouse on board? Sometimes you can't. You just got to keep doing your thing and be you, and know that you operate as an individual, and that you are not your husband, and you're joined, but not at the hip. You can move independently of the other person. I think sometimes we let ourselves believe that unless the husband or the wife or the spouse or significant other, whomever, is going with us, then we can't go. And that is just not true, because my husband decided he wanted to quit his job, wanted to get entrepreneurship before I did. And eventually I was like, okay, I just kind of listened, learned by osmosis, little by little. He didn't push me. And eventually I went with him, and here we are now. So I think that just kind of doing our own thing and setting that example is the best course of action. And using that as fuel to your fire. Any doubters, any haters in your life, you can just say, you know what, watch me, and then prove them wrong, like you said. And so you definitely proved them wrong. Yeah, your partner probably thought you were crazy and worried, because you said you had 2 mortgages, and
yes,
and you said it took him a few years for it to be 100% supportive, but now, you guys are crushing it, and I'm sure he's like, okay, I'm really glad you did that, right?
Yes, yeah, and he doesn't have to take the time off work around any school issues or holidays or anything like that, so that works for him as well.
Yeah, so his life has improved in addition to your life and your son's life, for sure. What's it been like for your son since you transitioned to working at home?
It's really interesting, actually. He now he's 9 now. So when I started this, he was 5. And he talks about now when he grows up and runs his business. And he sees me and the work I'm doing. And if I go for, like recently, I've been nominated for some awards, which I'm a finalist for, and I told him about, and he's just so excited. And it's really interesting, and it's super cool to watch him grow up with a bit of a business mindset and talk about that as he wants to get older and be a business person. So it's really good, and he loves it that I can obviously attend things at his school and be there and for different events and awards and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it works both ways.
Wow, I dig that. That is a major ripple effect that you've started, and I can't wait to see where that unfolds. And reality is, and I talk about this all the time, I'm a broken record, is that the biggest mistake people make when they start a business is they think about themselves. And you didn't do that. You thought about the other parents who didn't have support. You thought about the kids who are getting kicked out of school, and you're like, okay, I need to do this for them. And in return, you helped yourself, you helped your whole family. And now you're seeing that ripple effect really take shape as your son gets older and notices the mindset that you've adopted to create your own business. And he wants to create his own business, and there's no reason he can't, especially with somebody who's there and can support him and keep him on the right track. And I just dig that. So you guys at home who have kids and you're thinking, hey, how can I make this work with kids? You can literally make it work with kids, and you can make your kids work, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
If they want to.
Funny, I do that. Like, I run my kids' coaching sessions, and my son actually helps me with those. So, yeah, as I said, he's 9 years old, and he's already got his first little job. He gets paid for it, and he has his little jobs that he has to do within those sessions. So not only is he getting coached with other children, he's also got the opportunity to earn money and run a session. So when he's a bit older, he might be running his own session. Who knows?
Wow. I dig that so hard. Because,
cool.
Growing up in a society where I wasn't allowed to work until 15, 16. And I was so desperate to get a job, was so desperate to earn money. My mom didn't want to pay me more than like $2 a week to do a whole bunch of stuff. And I was like, no. So getting in an environment as a kid where you are allowed to create value for people and earn money as soon as possible, instead of having to wait till you're 16, that closes the window of opportunity for, other stuff to slip in and other mindsets to take hold. And I think there's a lot of people, especially in the United States, I don't know if it's the same in Australia, where, everybody's complaining about kids who have an entitlement mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because we are not allowed to work until we're 16. And so many of us just think everything's going to be handed to them. Meals are going to be handed to them. And, it's not about just doing chores, but getting your kids to create value in the world as soon as possible. I don't think you have to wait till you're 16 to do that. That's wasted time. So your kid's 9 and he's doing it. It's so amazing. It's so inspiring. So you mentioned that things are a little crazy at home now. About how many hours are you working during, a typical week, let's say?
Generally, it can be, with me, because I love it so much, I'm anywhere between 40 to 50 hours a week easily, but I don't have to do that. Sometimes, and recently I haven't, I've actually backed off a little bit where I'm literally only doing school hours, and I'll do some things on the weekend, like write my programs or things like that I really love doing. I don't really track that time because I love doing it so much. It's just part of my life now. But yeah, probably maybe 30 hours a week I can generally go down to, and I have been the last few weeks, which has been pretty nice.
That's great. And you mentioned you don't track. And I was just thinking, as you said that, I was like, I don't track. I just do what I need to do and make sure that I'm improving, even by the smallest percent of a percent. If I'm improving, if I'm moving forward, then I can call that a successful day. As long as I'm not doing nothing or hiding out of fear that, what I'm going to do is not going to work or whatever, just keep putting your value out into the world and you will grow. And speaking of growth, I'm curious to see, what's next for you, what measures you have in place to grow your business, or are you happy with where you are? What's next?
Oh, no, always growing. We've got a big goal. We've got a number of goals that we've set that we need to reach. So we're currently doing big marketing out for new virtual assistant client. And so that's a big marketing campaign we're doing at the moment. And on the coaching side of things, we've got some conferences coming up, and hoping to be setting up a membership program soon, and some parent retreats hopefully as well. So, and getting out there and speaking more as well. So I've got a few more speaking events planned for this year as well. So yeah, it doesn't stop here.
Yeah, that's excellent. And you've got this mission to bring this kind of coaching, this kind of assistance and support into the world, because as you started, you were looking for that kind of support and there wasn't any. And so some people just don't know that it exists, and you've taken it upon yourself. It's your mission. I think it's our moral responsibility as humans to take our good thing, to take our value and to spread it into the world to the people who need it. And if we are afraid of marketing ourselves, afraid of getting ourselves out there, then we're not just hurting ourselves, with our business and whatnot, we're hurting the people who need our help. So speaking of fear, I'm going to get to the very last question, the question I ask all of our guests, because I know there's somebody at home. They're thinking, oh, Paula's been doing this for 4 years. I'm never going to get there. I can't get started. I'm scared. I have a full-time job. I can't leave my job. They're just crippled by fear, despite this amazing success story, these hurdles that you've completely cleared, and that you're working through, you're pivoting through the forest. You're not letting those trees stop you. What advice would you give to someone who's at home and they want to work from home and they want to do what you've done, but they're just scared to get started and take that first step?
Yeah, so my advice would be to sit down and write exactly where you want to be, first of all, and whether your first thing you want to visualize is actually moving away from your business. What do you need to move away from, not your business, sorry, your job? What do you need for that? So my advice is, I had 3 months of savings saved up in my bank account. So at least I had 3 months to fall back on if no clients came through the door. But I also did a lot of work at night to try and get some clients initially before I walked out of the door of my employment. So definitely have that focus on where you want to be and know how much money you need. So, if you want to just cover the income you're getting now, then that's what you write down and work back from that. So work out how many clients you would need at what rate to get the income that you're getting now. And generally most people want to walk out of their employment getting the same amount of money they're getting initially. So that's a good place to start. And then just talk to people, go to some networking events, speak to other business owners, listen to lots of, things like this, like podcasts, read some books, and just start building up your confidence bit by bit. And it doesn't have to happen overnight. You can make this decision and then 6-12 months later, you can actually make the move. But it's all planning, step by step planning and don't expect everything to happen overnight. You do have to just plan it out, and then you'll just be at that, just reach that point where you go, yep, I'm ready now, and then set the date. So what I did is I set a date for the end of the year, and my employer had other ideas and wanted me an extra month. So I was like, okay, and set the date and know that that's the final date. Then go and give your notice for that date. And then there's no turning back. You have to do it then, and it'll kick you into action to do it.
Yeah, I love that. And I especially love what you said about just going out and talking to people. And I call it the magic of asking, ask people how they got started, surround yourself with people who are doing what you're doing. That's why we started this podcast. So people out there could tune in and hear stories from people who are right exactly where they were, anywhere from 6 months to, like you, Paula, 4 years ahead of where they could be in that same amount of time or even less time. I got started less than 4 years ago, and I never would have thought if I had said, hey, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to have this big business, big to me anyway. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, it had to happen overnight. I probably never would have gotten started because it was too scary for me. It was too big of a step. And so I think sometimes we get ourselves all in a tizzy, over and having to understand, and we can plan things, but we can't plan it all because we just don't know what's going to happen. And so we can plan our exit strategy like what you did. But I think a mistake I see a lot of people make is they think they have to understand how everything works and how to do everything before they'll even have enough guts to get started. But the thing is, learning changes everything, and you can learn along the way, just like what you did, just like what I did, and all of our guests on Working from Heroes podcast have done. So, Paula, I want to say thank you so much for spending your early morning hour, half an hour here, at least with us, and for imparting your wisdom and knowledge. And you're a veteran here on Working from Heroes podcast. You've been doing this for 4 years, and you made some big strides and overcame a lot of big obstacles. Where can people reach you? We're going to tag you in the Facebook group as usual. You'll be in there and you can go right to the thread, you guys. If you're listening at home, you want to ask Paula a question about how she did all of this, you want some more details, you can talk to her inside the Working from Heroes group. Where can they reach you, your website, whatnot, if they have some more questions?
Yeah, sure. They can reach me on my website, which is www.beyondthemaze.com.au, or you can jump on my Facebook group, which is ADHD Beyond the Maze, and just send me a private message through there, and we regularly check those. And I'm happy to chat to anybody who is just starting out or just wanting to make that decision to make the leap, and I can help you through it.
Yes, creating even more ripple effect, and just keep giving and it will come back to you. Thank you so much for being on the show, Paula.
No problem. Thank you.
Well, thank you for listening. Links are in the show notes as usual. Please join our Work at Home Heroes Facebook community if you haven't already. And if you're finding value in this podcast, it would mean a ton to us at Work at Home Heroes if you'd leave us a review. Thanks again, and have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Work at Home Heroes podcast with Caitlin Pyle. Be sure to listen to previous episodes at caitlinpyle.co/podcast. While you're there, read the show notes and check out all the great links and resources mentioned in this episode and more. You can also subscribe to the Work at Home Heroes podcast so you'll automatically be notified when our next episode is available. Remember, as Caitlin says, mo skills means mo money.